we weren't ready for this level of press. So we had a tiny little Facebook page with 63 likes, and very little description. And the only thing Fox News could find about us was that tiny thing. And the guys are going, God, this is just such a scam, such a rip-off. It was really funny, but it's gone on to do really well in the UK, and we run around 2 to 3 events a month in London.
This is the Ideas Lab podcast, where you can learn from great creative and entrepreneurial minds how to turn your ideas into original businesses, books, and brands. Because in a crowded world, it pays to stand out. This is your host, John Williams, best-selling author and founder of the Ideas Lab London. Adam Wilder is founder of Togetherness, helping people explore meaningful connection with themselves and others. Adam has run some remarkable projects, and in this episode, he explains how he had the idea for the first Togetherness festival, how he created a silent dating event, Shhh Dating, and how he organized a group of people to break the world record for most number of people spooning. Adam, welcome to the Ideas Lab podcast.
Hi, John.
Glad to have you here. Now, you run, would you call it the Togetherness Project? I don't actually know the official term.
We call it Togetherness. It's an organization to cultivate more meaningful connection, to give people the tools to connect more deeply with themselves and others wherever they are in the world.
That's a big mission. So tell us what that looks like now. What does Togetherness do?
Right now, we run retreats, we run festivals, and we run talks and workshops. This year, we're developing some online courses as well, because we want to be able to reach people wherever they are.
Yeah, that's cool. And how did you have the idea right at the beginning for Togetherness? And what was it back then?
I've mainly run my own businesses. I've hardly worked for other people since my 20s, and my businesses have always involved some way where people could have like a richer, more enjoyable form of contact with each other. So I ran the biggest Burns night in Europe, which was great. I love Kaylee, right? So it was all about Kaylee and feasting. I did a hot tub bar in Hackney Wick. I did immersive comedy I did one with Stuart Lee in this old Victorian cemetery in East London. I used to perform and do comedy. So I've always been interested in people relating more deeply. I ran a speed dating company, which still goes, actually, called Shhh Dating, speed dating without talking. And I found it really exhausting, John, to have different brands and different audiences that didn't join up and different ways of speaking. And I wanted to just have one thing that I could focus my energy in. And I didn't know what it would look like, but I had some idea like, it'd be nice if I ran a festival to bring all of this together. And then the real catalyst actually is that I went to someone else's festival in London, and it had some of the things that I like, some of the workshops and courses I think are good, but the way they did it, I really didn't like. I thought it was way too pseudo-spiritual and pseudo-scientific. It felt like a kind of 1970s Eastern European kind of, what do they call it, like stag do or something. It just felt a bit weird, and
I'm not quite sure what a 1970s Eastern spiritual stag do is Eastern European, but anyway, I'll take your word for it. It sounds bad.
And yeah, it was bad the way they're presenting things, and I felt that a lot of the stuff they're doing here is great, but they're doing it in a way in which 0.01% of people are interested in. Everyone else is going to find this really weird. They're going to find something wrong with it. And I just had this very, very strong feeling that I know how to do this better. I know how to do something better than this. And I decided pretty much there and then that I was going to create something better. And so that's what I did. And I planned it for 6 months. I didn't know what the whole of Togetherness was going to look like. I just thought, I'm going to run this festival. We're going to do it in London. We're going to make it really accessible. So the venue I found was in Canary Wharf, in the financial district at the top of this skyscraper. I got in touch with the teachers that I think are really brilliant, really interesting. I had great. I think the curation was really good, and there were things in there about like the language we use and how it affects our job opportunities and our work life. There was stuff about relationships. There was stuff about sexuality. There was stuff about psychedelics. So it was quite an interesting thing. But you might be interested in more in the sexuality. You might be interested more in the science of psychedelics for depression. But and whilst you were there, you could have a look at some of the other things that were going on. And I really like to. I think one of the most important thing with events is to make people feel welcome when they arrive. I mean, when I go to an event, I feel a bit nervous if I don't know people. So I sort of tied the whole thing up with a lovely kind of welcome and a lovely way of helping people to meet each other. And it was really amazing. We sold all 500 tickets. We were in the Guardian. We did great. Just trying to think did I hire a PR person? I did hire a PR person to help me out a bit, and we did great with that event. And there was a big sense, wow, this is something that people love, that people get stuff from, that people want to continue with. And so based on that, I then developed the Togetherness movement, which has been a lot of trial and error. I don't know if you've ever had that, like your first thing is this great big success. You're like, oh my God, what do I do with it now?
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm trying to picture this very first festival. Is that and you're covering this big range of subjects. So I think there's an important point there, though, because it wasn't just about the content, and which is what you've said. There was good content in the other festival you went to, but it didn't feel right. There's always two things at play, particularly in a live event, but I think in lots of business propositions, for anyone who wants to create one that's successful. One is the tangible stuff you get out of it, and the other is just what it feels like to be involved with that organization. And so you were doing things like making sure that when people turned up, they really felt welcome. Is there anything in particular you did so that happened?
Yeah, well, first of all, we had all these volunteers. And, I got people that I work with a lot to go on the front desk. So just that, even the very first point of contact, it's really friendly, it's really welcoming. We did a welcome session, which was part of the whole day. And I can't remember what we entitled it, but I think it was an hour long. And in that hour, I led people through a series of little interactions, from moving and dancing a little bit, making eye contact to each other, this sort of handshake game. And then we took people into little groups of 5 or 6, or maybe it was 4, and they actually got to say things like, what's your name, and what is it that has made you decide to come here? And I think the next bit was, is there something you're feeling nervous or anxious about? And when people have a chance to actually say what it is that they're afraid of or whatever, it can really release it. And people think, oh my God, that person's feeling this. I thought I was the only one who was scared because I don't know anyone. And all these people feel the same way. Then everyone relaxes. We can all treat each other like humans and have a richer experience together.
Yeah, and I've been to a couple of your things, and I think you do it very nicely where you start, because I'm not the world's number one fan of intense eye contact exercises and intimacy with strangers, even though I'm a fairly open person otherwise. But in that moment of contact, I can find that quite tense. And you lead people through this nice progression from something that feels very unthreatening until, by the end of the evening or the end of the day, you're doing things that you might not imagine that you would do at the end. And I think it's the subtlety of what you do in that. I think that's really important.
Thanks, John. I think it's nice to, you can't push people too far because they just will completely shut down. And the other thing is I didn't want it to be like a club where, yeah, we're all eye gazing, we all love hugging all the time. I don't like hugging loads of strangers, you know, and I like to tell people however they're feeling is all right. You know, if people are feeling this is the weirdest thing that I've ever done and I feel really uncomfortable right now, that's perfect. That's just, it's good to notice it and to express that, because I think it's the expression of the truth of what's there which helps us to come together.
Yes, and I would agree with that. And I think you're right. So that's quite different from those sort of events you go to. I'm imagining some in Bali, where it feels like there's this sort of intimacy fascism. If you turn up and there's some, spirit, you can use that phrase, don't you? But, and there's some sort of, guru who makes, I describe their eye contact as like an act of terrorism. They make such intense eye contact, but it's just like disturbing. And then like if you're not ready to hug everybody in sight, no matter their state of undress, then there's clearly something wrong with you that you need to work on. So what you've done is you've said, no, intimacy is a great thing we can all work on wherever you're starting from, and do it in a way where you don't have to be somebody who hangs out in Ubud in Bali or yeah, in order to appreciate it. So I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And I, like you, John, I love this intimacy fascism. This is great. Yeah. I found that a lot, this real like spiritual materialism, and it's almost like someone, I think we can all be guilty of this when we find something new that really works for us, and then we just start judging everyone else who isn't doing it, But that's one that I'm keen to steer away from together.
Yes. Another phrase I use is yoga Nazis. So people who they've discovered yoga and they've loved it, and they love it so much they just go, you should do yoga. Whatever your problem is, from migraines to a broken leg, it's like you should do yoga. And I go like, I've tried yoga, it didn't do much for me, and I quite like it, but it's not life changing for me. But other things I really like. So you also mentioned quickly there, Shhhdating, and you're still running this. Can you explain what it is? Because it's a quite remarkable event, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a speed dating event without talking. And it actually started because I had a girlfriend. I was doing some comedy at the time. I was in Australia doing some shows, and we would speak every couple of days, and we would catch up on the phone about what we're doing and how we've been, and that was all very well. But at the end of the call, we had a bit of time where we'd both be on the line, but we weren't talking. And we both found this really strange, compelling intimacy from that silence together. And so I got together with some other people, and we decided to try it out as a dating event, and it went great. It went really, really well. The first event, every single person got matched up, and we sent out a press release. This is an interesting story for you, actually. We sent out a press release. It got picked up by the Daily Mail, and they did a massive double-page spread on it. The journalist who came was amazing and thought it was great. Online, we got so much bile about it, and it got picked up, and I'm pretty sure it even got onto Fox News, and I'm not sure if it was Tucker Carlson or someone who was. And we'd only just started, right? We weren't ready for this level of press. So we had a tiny little Facebook page with 63 likes, and very little description. And the only thing Fox News could find about us was that tiny thing. And the guys are going, God, this is just such a scam, such a ripoff. It was really funny, but it's gone on to do really well in the UK, and we run around two to three events a month in London. And this year I've just started to train people to license them to run the events elsewhere. But essentially, it's about meeting. Well, essentially, it's like this, John. Right? We go around in the world. Sometimes we have our different masks on, right? When we're in the boardroom, when we're with friends, when we're with people, we don't always want to show everything, right? But what can happen is we can start pretending to be someone that we think the other person wants. I don't know if you've ever had that on a dating experience. Like I used to do that all the time. And so this kind of always leads to disaster, because either they'll know that something's not quite genuine, it feels a bit weird, or they'll think you're perfect, and the minute you show who you really are, they'll get really upset, and vice versa. So Shhh Dating is about, well, let's just forget about all of that. Let's just see how we feel with each other as people, and it's about finding the connection before you find the right words. And again, we do it with a progression. So the first half is connection games to build intimacy, to build skills, and to build sensitivity to each other. And the second half is eye gazing, and then we have an online matching system, so you can match with people. And what we find is people who match through our dating event say they tend to go on more dates with the other person than other dating events. And so that's pretty cool. And we have marriages. I'm going to a wedding this year. Some people met Shhh Dating. They've actually had a baby as well, which is lovely.
Wow. I love it. And one of the other quite interesting things, which probably also annoyed Tucker Carlson, was that you broke the world spooning record, didn't you? Can you explain what on earth that was about?
Yeah. That was at Wilderness Festival in Oxfordshire. Have you ever been to that?
I've heard of it, and I think I've got a friend that goes, but I haven't been there.
It's quite different because, but anyway, it's made by the guys who did the Secret Garden party, which really like changed the idea of how to run a festival. And that was really for people in their 20s, really partying. And what's happened is that generation got a bit older and started having kids and becoming dentists. And then they've created this Wilderness Festival for people who want maybe a little bit less partying and a bit more intellect and a bit more culture. And I think some quite well-known, well, I think David Cameron was there last year, just hanging out. So some quite, whatever your political views, there's sort of varied, interesting people going there. So there we have our own tent. And we decided it would be really fun to promote one of our ideas, which is around touch for well-being, consensual touch for well-being, whether it's like, hugging or whatever. So we took over the atrium stage and ran this mass spooning event, which was so fun. We had, families and children and brothers and sisters and people we made a massive conga line basically. And then we got everyone down in spooning position, and it was really fun.
So is everyone in a circle in order, like spokes on a wheel, in order to spoon each other, or is it just in one line? We have to get the details of this right.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, one thing I have to say is that it's not actually an official world record because Guinness didn't come down to verify it. But we made a long line and we wove it around the stage. So it wasn't quite a circle end to end, but it was a big spoon.
And what's interesting is that it on first hearing that sounds like a consent nightmare. So what you've done, you've had to face this issue head on of how do you stop somebody doing something inappropriate in one of your workshops, and I think you got really sophisticated responses and frameworks around that. I mean, is there something in particular in the spooning that you make sure, if everyone's in close bodily contact, how do you make sure somebody doesn't get some unwelcome contact?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think that it's really important how things are set up, John. So the way we set the whole thing up, we talked about the way you connect with people. We told them how to do it, and they have to ask permission first. And we got them to actually model saying no as well, which was really fun because a lot of people feel like they can't say no. And then we had about 60 people going around with jackets, checking in on everyone the whole time and watching how things are going. So I think it was good. We didn't have any complaints.
Yeah, that's great. So what is next for Togetherness? In fact, we haven't mentioned, of course, Togetherness House, which you had for a year, did you? So this is the property in Covent Garden, and you ran events there really regularly, didn't you? I mean, several times, but I went to a couple. Several times a week, was it?
Yeah, we did. We had an opportunity. There was a a really nice building which was due to be redeveloped, and we had an opportunity to take it. And within about 2 weeks of finding out about the opportunity, I was like, "Yep, let's do this." And I had sort of no real plan and not a lot of resources, and we took it on, and that was really interesting. I suppose, I thought that at its best, this could be an amazing model of there's this crisis of loneliness and connection, and people need these skills, and maybe we can have these things a bit like yoga centers, but for connection, for your soul, for personal development, and maybe we can make a model here that can just spread around the world. So that's what we tried to do for 10 months, and we had a lot of success. We had about 5,000 people come through and take part in things. It was quite a tricky experience, all the costs of running a venue and the staffing, and actually I probably wouldn't do it again unless I had £500,000 and a team of 10 brilliant minds to do it with. But it was great, and it got our name out there a lot more. So some of the benefits of that I've got a lot of companies now contacting me and asking, can we come and run workshops for them? Can we do things? But that we wrapped that up at the end of October, and it's sadly been developed now into flats. And it really made me think. Last year was I felt like I was on a hamster wheel, John, and I never really was able to step back and think about what are we doing, and is it working, and is it aligned with our mission? And so this year we're working more with organizations. We're creating some online courses, and we'll be doing about 3 one-day festivals throughout the year where people can come and find out what we're about. And this year I really want to be out there more, going to other places. Last year was like, come to us, come to the house. And actually there's loads of people out there who really love to hear what we're doing. So we're going out to them.
Great. In the UK or even outside the UK, do you think?
In the UK, we've had some offers of outside of the UK. And so we'll just, that would be quite fun as well.
I think it's great. I think what you're doing is very impressive and very, very well executed from what I've seen of it, and great ideas as well. So if anyone wants to find out about everything going on at Togetherness, where should they go?
Togetherness.com. It's got our website. It's got loads of great free resources. We've got one up there at the moment for planning your year ahead, taking stock of last year, and some great ones about games around touch you can play with partners or friends to learn about boundaries and sovereignty.
And you mentioned online courses. What would the online courses be about, if you're able to say at the moment?
Yeah, it's called Foundations of Connection, and it's an online version of the course we were running last year, which was really successful. And it's to give people the tools to connect better with themselves and other people in their lives, wherever you are in the world. So it's about the ability to create community around you, to say what you really want. And this can help you in your business life, in your home life, with your family, and all your relationships.
That's great. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks very much, Adam.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ideas Lab podcast. Please do subscribe, and if you've enjoyed this episode, it would be great if you could leave us a review. You can get links and details of everything mentioned in the podcast in the show notes, along with photos and video clips from many of our episodes. Just go to theideaslab.org/podcast.